Welcome back to the Fantasy Formula. And as we get ready for the Japanese Grand Prix, Zach, I can't help but think about how lucky we've been through the first two races.
I tell you what, I hope this luck continues for the rest of the season. That Norris should not have worked out, but my God, with obviously the whole craziness with the DSQs, with Leclerc and Hamilton, I mean, even Gasly, Hamilton lost that fastest lap, Norris gained it, and Piastri and Norris basically ended up with identical points. I don't know how we managed to survive it.
It's 2 weeks in a row for us because we had Piastri spinning out on the grass in Australia. He worked his way out of that jam. Then last week with Lando, he had the long brake pedal, two possible DNFs for us that we escaped. And as we'll talk about a little later, Lando actually inherited the fastest lap as a result of those DSQs. So lots of good luck for us all the way through the first 2 weeks. Now, not everyone had good luck in China because after the race, like you mentioned a moment ago, Zach, Pierre Gasly and both Ferraris were disqualified. Now, a lot of people were on social media upset about these penalties because they thought there weren't going to be any penalties for drivers that have been disqualified. Do you want to walk us through some of the rules that came out after qualifying in Australia a few weeks ago? Because a lot of people were surprised by them.
Yeah, so we've had a bit of a change to it. So, like you mentioned, we thought it was only going to be the constructors for disqualifications. And I might say, I did not think this would come up so early on in the season. So, it's maybe not good for anyone who had Ferrari assets, but it's good that they've been able to push out exactly what they mean now. So now we do know for a fact it will be minus 20 points for the drivers. So you'll see Leclerc, Hamilton got minus 20 points. And because it was a sprint race weekend, they still ended up with decent points because they still got points from, the sprint race and qualifying. And then with the constructor, they get that minus 20 plus an extra minus 10. So you'll see Ferrari in the race got a minus 60 overall, which really hurts their points.
And not to mention, you lose any awards that you won up until that point. So Lewis's fastest lap went to Lando, and Ferrari's fastest pit stop went to Racing Bull. So a lot of points swung one way or another as a result of those DSQs. Very, very tough week. Another surprise from China was the price changes because several drivers didn't match that model that we thought was locked down going into the weekend. And there were a few reasons why. Number one, especially with Kimi Antonelli, it looks like that threshold between tier A and tier B is actually 19 million instead of 20 million. So Antonelli entered China in tier A and none of us knew it. So his price game was a little bit lower than we thought. Meanwhile, these PPM thresholds increased from zero point 0.2, zero point 0.3, zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.4, zero point 0.6, zero point 0.8. So we had a few drivers get a slightly lower price gain than we thought, but there's still lots of good options for this week too. So I'm not too taken aback by it, but it definitely sent some people for a loop.
Yeah, especially some drivers like Albon is in that middle ground of the B tier assets. He's the one who I feel quite bad for if anyone had, because he didn't do bad with 17 points in Australia and 11 points in China. However, now he's going to need, I believe it's around 19 points to get that 0.6 million threshold with the new calculations we think will be correct, which all of a sudden kind of makes him a steer clear for me.
Yes, and I've got a little bit of news about Albon's history in Suzuka that's going to turn you off even further. And so F1 Fantasy Tools is predicting one last jump in these thresholds for Japan this week up to 0.6, zero point 0.9, and 1.2. And even though it's continuing to move up a little bit, there are still some great price gain options that Zach and I are going to tell you about once we get to our tier list in just a minute. It's at this point in the show, I always remind you, make sure you like and subscribe. It helps us understand which content is really hitting with all of our audience. So do let us know what you think, both in the comments and by hitting that like button. Zach, before we get into the Japanese Grand Prix preview, we've got to talk about the biggest news of the week, and that's, of course, Yuki Tsunoda, Liam Lawson switching seats ahead of this race. I can't wait to see what it's going to make for F1 Fantasy.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I mean, how exactly their price increases will work as well, because they'll be on a slightly different plan from the way things look. And also, Yuki at 16.8 million. We saw Lawson there and it was an instant no, but of course we had more data. But who knows? Maybe Yuki can perform at his home Grand Prix, we'll see.
I think with both of their prices, they're in a bit of no man's land. Now, they truly traded seats and prices. So Sonoda's at 16.8 million, Lawson's at 8.4 million. But Yuki's only 2.5 million less than Antonelli, who's the second highest scoring driver in the game right now. So that sets a really high bar for Yuki, even if you assume a points finish and a driver of the day win, he's got to get a lot of points to really earn that price tag. Meanwhile, with Lawson, he's priced between Stroll and Ocon, who have been really good in the game so far, both in terms of points scored and value gained. So I think they're going to be really hard pressed to earn that value in these first few races. Now, if you have either of these assets, remember, they've made new player cards for both Tsunoda and Lawson entering this race, and the old cards are going to be inactivated. So if you want to avoid those really steep inactive driver penalties, make sure you bring new Yuki or new Liam or a different driver altogether onto your team so you don't face those penalties.
So now, heading into the Japanese Grand Prix, here is our new updated buy and sell sort of tier list. And as you can see, straight away on the fence, what shouts out to me is Kimi Antonelli. Because of what Adam did slightly mention earlier, he's now an A-tier asset. We didn't think it'd happen this quickly, but now that he's only getting 0.3 million increases, yes, he's been pretty good so far this season. However, a lot of it has been a great result in Australia, but chaotic. And also that driver of the day does help, which is still a little bit of a mystery of how he got that. So it's one for potentially, maybe if you could pair him with Piastri and McLaren, if you have that sort of budget. But other than that, I don't think it's something I'd be going for now.
I really like how safe McLaren and Mercedes are as a foundation for your team this week. I think a lot of teams are going to be moving into that Piastri, McLaren, Mercedes build with the cheapest drivers possible. And then the next tier of budget gains will allow you to get better and better drivers in the midfield. So it's a really safe points lineup. Also, too, with Ferrari, those disqualification penalties have made them truly radioactive for the next few weeks. So they are firmly in the sell category for us. But I think you'll find a lot of my teams and Zach's teams starting with at least McLaren, if not McLaren and Mercedes too.
And then we head over down to our B tier budgets. And, well, I mean, you can see from the tier list, it very much is, especially in the buy option, it's those drivers who are predicted a 0.6 million increase. It's that simple. Haas, they need something ridiculous to not even get that 0.6 million increase. So they are like set on that budget increase constructor that you'd really want no matter what price they get. I think realistically, they'd have to basically get 2 disqualifications to not get that 0.6 million increase. And then, of course, you have Ocon, Hulkenberg, Stroll, all look good for that as well. And by the way, they have been good on points so far this season as well. It isn't just those price increases. I mean, Stroll, he's been phenomenal so far, which I completely shocked me. But yeah, he's definitely one I'd keep around in my team.
This is the longest I've ever been on the Lance Stroll hype train, but I'm here for it. I think another 0.6 million gain is in the cards for Lance, so I'm all about him. As far as Haas, I looked it up. They need to score negative 31 points or more for that 0.6 million. So I think they're going to be on a lot of the cost cap building teams this week. Racing Bulls, very similar, negative 3 points this week for a 0.6 million price increase. So if you like Liam Lawson back on that team, that would be a really good shout if you're trying to build your cost caps too. Now, one driver that we've moved to the fence, but I want to push him as far off to the side as possible is Alex Albon because he is on 3 straight DNFs in Japan. And I'm not talking engine failures. It's 3 straight collisions. 2 out of those 3 collisions are lap 1 incidents. So it seems like Albon's getting collected a lot at this circuit. And I'm a little bit nervous about running Williams, period, because we played with fire last week in China. I'm not sure I could run Williams 2 weeks in a row, especially with some of the audio coming out of Carlos Sainz. He hasn't totally figured out how to dial in the speed on that car yet. So Williams, maybe on the hold or maybe even on the sell category for me.
And then if you look over on our fence for the B tier assets, 2 really stick out for me that are really, it's going to be very interesting to see exactly how it all plays out because you've got the likes of Bortoleto and Hadjar. Now, Hadjar, I was mentioning to Adam, I'm quite interested in, not really in Japan, but maybe for Bahrain once we get rid of that -20, but also for both of them, it's about what the minimum price an asset can be. Because last season we saw Logan Sargent couldn't go lower than 4.5 million, and both of Bortoleto and Hadjar, if they get that -0.6 decrease, which most likely they will go lower than that 4.5 million threshold. So it'll be interesting to see if they can go lower, what does that mean the minimum price is, and if they can't go lower than 4.5 million, all of a sudden they are very much in that buy category purely because they physically can't go down. That's such a steal in F1 Fantasy.
I think they're going to be both very popular this week because a lot of us can only afford 4 or 5 good assets that are gonna gain value this week, usually we're still gonna be stuck with one driver that's going to take a loss, and if you're gonna take a loss, it could be a Bortoleto or a Hadjar that maybe only lose point 0.3 or even less this week because they're gonna hit that 4.5 million threshold. So I think all eyes are going to be on whether or not the game maintains 4.5 million as that point where drivers can't go any lower, because these could be some of the most valuable assets in the game moving forward.
And then chip wise, realistically, I think for this weekend, it's a no go on all of them. So, weather report wise, I don't think it's going to rain this weekend. So, I wouldn't be looking near any no negative movement. Then, extra DRS, autopilot, limitless, all of these are sort of better on sprint race weekends or when your team has a better budget later down the line. So for me, Japan is a no-go for any of these chips. Unless we see something crazy in qualifying, then we can talk about final fix potentially.
I think the one thing I'd add to this, Zach, is if you didn't use the wild card last week like we did, and you want to get in on the fun of budget building, feel free to drop a wild card just to start building some of those budget builder teams like we had with the McLaren, Haas, Lando Norris build. I think that could gain a ton of money. So make sure if you have the wild card and you want to start building your cost cap, that's a good chance to do it too. So, Zach, bringing it all together, let's talk about some of our top lineup builds for this week. This first one, I never thought we would do going into Australia, but it's triple Haas, but the price gain potential is huge with this one.
Yeah, I mean, straight off the bat, it's not basically, it's 7 out of 7 of the assets looking like they're going to increase 0 0.3 or 0.6 million, which would be phenomenal. It would set you up perfectly for later on the season. And not only this, we're getting to a point where this budget team doesn't even look too shabby for the points. Now, I'd like to mention with Norris, you can switch to Piastri as well. I think I'll be looking at FP2 results to see who are 2 times. However, potentially, especially for me, it'd take a -10 to then do all of the Haas stuff. So I'll probably be just sticking with Lando Norris for now. But Ocon, Stroll, Behrman, Hulkenberg, they all look phenomenal as B tier assets. And like I mentioned before, they all haven't done bad on points as well. So I think this team 100% will be the favorite going into Japan.
I agree. And a lot of the players that have sent me their teams to preview heading into Japan, a lot of McLaren Haas builds trying to build that cost cap. And especially if you're one of those teams like Zach and I that got a little bit lucky these first 2 weeks, maybe you have a point surplus. You can take a little bit of a hit on the points just to build up your cost cap because that's going to set us up for much better teams as the season goes on. So I look to this team to be very popular. Now, one thing I am a little nervous about is if a Haas driver DNFs, it's going to hit you in both spots. So you got to really be at peace with not scoring a ton of points. But even if a Haas driver does DNF, in a lot of these cases, they'll still get pretty significant value. So I think this is going to be a strong team. And so if you want a piece of that budget building, but you also want to get in the action of the biggest news of the week, team number 2 is for you because it has Oscar Piastri, McLaren, and the Racing Bulls constructor. So you get Liam Lawson there, but then it also allows you to afford Yuki Tsunoda in his first race in Red Bull. So if you think that home race with the last year of the Honda partnership, potentially the White Bull livery coming out this week and having a little extra magic, this team's for you.
Yeah, this team definitely is the risk it for a chocolate biscuit kind of feeling. I mean, this team very much could score you so many points. And I mean, hey, if Yuki really did perform, oh, you'd be sitting pretty after using this team compared to even Team 1.
And then team 3 is if you want to go all in for the points. I had mentioned this a little while earlier. The safest assets in the game are McLaren and Mercedes, so you're taking advantage of that with your constructors. Oscar Piastri, one of the strongest drivers in the game as your 2x driver. And I quite like what Isack Hadjar has been doing this year. Definitely a good points floor. And once he kicks that opening DNS, I think he's going to be great for cost cap gain too. So a really strong team, both for points and a little bit of cost cap gain as well.
Yeah, because like we mentioned, this team definitely is more focused on the points sort of feel around your team. However, because of like we mentioned before, of the potential minimum price being 4.5 million for Bortoleto and Hadjar, it's still, yeah, not bad on that budget gaining. Is it as good as the triple Haas McLaren budget gaining? No, but this team could potentially get you up to 50 to 100 points more on an ideal weekend, and you're still going up potentially around 2-ish, 1.5, 2-ish million in budget. I think that's a pretty good deal.
So we've got three very different teams this week, all with an eye towards some cost cap build and then varying degrees of point scoring. So some really great options for you in Japan. I wanted to skip over the fan amp picks this week because of my score, but Zach said I've got to sit through it. I had another tough week because I put a little too much faith in Ferrari, especially after what I saw on the sprint race. Now I am in dead last, but Zach, you are the big winner this week. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that podium, I got it spot on. I was pretty chuffed. And I mean, I can't say it was a massive stroke of like genius, considering I did just put how, well, technically, basically almost how they qualified, just with Norris ahead of Russell. But hey, it worked out. We love to see it.
And there's still plenty of time to compete with us. At this point, if you started this week, you'd probably catch up to me anyway. So head on over to the FanAmp app, play our picks game every week, and we give away a great prize from Fifth Gear Garms every week. And if you take a look at Zach's shirt, he's rocking the Oscar Piastri helmet for 2025. So lots of great stuff in their 2025 line. And last but not least, let's talk about the Fantasy Formula Featured League over on F1.com. We've got over 50,000 teams now in this league, and our top team so far is Go Norris. And this team is actually the number 9 team in the global league, so they're doing really great on the global scale as well. Go Norris followed up the extra DRS boost in Australia with a Ferrari-free Limitless team. So really smart work by Brandon in the second race. That team still scored almost 400 points with Limitless, so I'm keeping an eye on China in future seasons because if it wasn't for the disqualifications, Limitless still played pretty well at that circuit.
That is a very good Limitless considering all the chaos. Wow, well done.
Thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back this Saturday at 1 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. in the UK for our deadline live Q&A stream for Japan.
Yeah, we've been having some good fun over there. We've been answering all your questions, F1 Fantasy related. We've had some great banter so far. We've had some polls going as well. We're getting everything that you need to know for F1 Fantasy, your chips, what you want to use in your teams, basically all of those deadline stories ahead, because obviously we'll know FP2 results. I mean, all of the practice results. It's Japan, so there's no sprint race weekend. So excited to help you all out there.
Ugh, I missed FP2. I can't wait to talk to all of you this weekend. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you Saturday.